Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at journey number 17 through 19, continuing our look at this wonderful black and white comic from the 80s, which chronicled the adventures of Wolverine McAllister back in the old frontier times of America. Let's get started. Number 17 here, another beautifully colored cover by William Messner Loebs. Really dig his watercolors. This issue, they start a what has gone on before type page, a recap, which is very helpful because William Messner Loebs is just throwing more and more characters in all the time. And it's a good thing because all of his characters are very interesting. So we start off with the chief of this tribe. Now, this tribe we saw earlier, it was the one that White Bear, basically Tecumseh's ambassador, he showed up and tried to convince them to join Tecumseh's union to fight the white man. At first, they didn't want to because this guy was an Iroquois, and they don't like them. This tribe didn't like the Iroquois. So... but eventually, because of Tecumseh's predictions about the eclipse and the earthquake, which have all happened in the past few issues, they've come around. And now they really like White Bear. And not only that, but the chief's daughter really likes White Bear. And it looks like they're going to get married. So the chief just doesn't like this guy. He's one of the few holdouts. He's like, I don't like this White Bear. God damn it. And he's kind of antagonizing him. So this elder is kind of talking him down, just saying, he's a pretty good guy, this White Bear. And, he did, Tecumseh did predict the eclipse and 2 earthquakes, I guess. And White Bear's come up with these magic shields, he calls them, which are just basically a bunch of tightly woven reeds that you'd wear on your chest. He claims that this will stop the white man's bullets. But it's such a humanly written little passage here. This is all we see of these guys for 10 issues. And we just totally get a sense of their characters. And I love how the father, after all of his complaints about White Bear, the main thing is he's like, and I hate him calling me dad, because he's going to be his future father-in-law. Oh, guys, I love this sequence. So, I don't know if you guys remember in, I believe, number 10, there was that dog, Sparrow Dark's dog, and he had his own little narration in his own language. So now we get the squirrel. I'll read a little of it. I love this kind of shit. Her name was Sui, and she was a good forager. In fact, her name meant, I am a swift and adorable hunter. The tree was to have been denning place to her and her mate, whose name is, I am fierce and no one can catch me. But they're, because of the earthquake, her preferred tree stocked with nuts and berries is devastated. So we see how even the earthquake affects this little squirrel, not just the human characters. And this is chapter 17, Dyspora. And we see the squirrel, and we see this pile of logs, and someone's under it. They're saying, help. So now we see the survivors of the destruction of Fort Miami. The whole fort was just destroyed by the earthquake. And they're looking for survivors. We see Calico Jack there. And the other denizens of Fort Miami. And basically, they're all just going to scatter. One of the soldiers is like, I think I'm just going to become a manservant again. That was a nice, easy life. And now we see Commandant Lenore, and Ilsa Kiefer, the widow. Well, she's not a widow anymore. Her husband turned up. And, they're totally in love. And Oh, I'm sorry, guys. This is Hans, her husband. And this is a really well-written little passage here of they're just talking, where they're just like, yeah, I guess we both moved on. I thought you were dead, and now I'm in love with Commandant Lenoir. And Hans is like, yeah, I'm definitely not the same person I was. I just want to live in the wild now. I want adventure. So they have this very mature discussion of just how, like, yeah, I guess we're not really married anymore. So now we finally get to Wolverine. Wolverine's been tossed around by this earthquake. The last issue almost let us think he was dead. And it's weird, Wolverine is really shooken. He's been shook by these events. Where it's basically like, Wolverine is constantly fighting nature. He's been chased by bears. He's gone through tornadoes, freezing weather. But this earthquake, which apparently was the biggest earthquake in North American history, this one in 1811, I believe, just the power of nature. He's kind of a little just off his game. He's kind of just devastated by it mentally. Just like, wow, I thought I was kind of could survive in nature, but after shit like that, whatever. He finds his canoe, and the river is gone. The earthquake has actually drained the river. So he's just like, oh, fuck this. What the hell's going on? Up is down, black is white. So we see Commandant Lenoir. And he's talking to Luther Burke, the old revolutionary, who has just been working basically as a dishwasher type guy at Fort Miami. And, he's done. He's like, I was never supposed to be a commandant of a fort in the first place. I'm a journalist. And he basically says, Luther, I think you should lead them. You should take over. After the way you, gathered up the men to defend the fort, they respect you, and you'll be a fine leader. I'm done. So now we see these Native American characters, and, they were living in the fort or near the fort. No, near the fort. They lived in that village, the friendly Indian village that Lieutenant Van Pelt attacked with his men. And all of a sudden, Seamus O'Connor shows up. Now, guys, this is the one who shot the little girl in the village. He didn't want to, but, in the heat of battle, and he was just, it rocked him to his core. And so now he's here, and he finds out that the little girl is just wounded, and she's actually okay. It's a mild wound. She's not dead. But he wanted to come and basically apologize and say, I was the one who shot your daughter, but he can't do it. Look how good he is with emotions here, where he's just looking at them, and then he looks down. He chickens out. He can't admit to them. But we realize he's a decent man. He totally regrets what he did, and he wants to make good on it. So now we see Hans and Ilsa again, and BK shows up. And, excuse me. And so everyone scatters. So, basically, this is going to be an interesting little triangle going on. So, Commandant Lenoir and Ilsa are going to try to get to the next town. That guy who wanted to be a manservant, he hired on as their manservant. And Lenoir actually says to Hans, he says, you're a wilderness man now. Can we hire you to guide us, to be our guide? We need you. And, obviously this is going to be very awkward. But Hans agrees. So we'll catch up with them later, I imagine. Now we see Wolverine again. Once again, he's almost half dead from the cold. And he's in a, basically he's in a dark place. He is just really not feeling great about life. And all of a sudden, somebody taps him on the head. And he freaks out. And he trips and falls down this little hillock. Man, I love when Mesner-Loebs does this kind of great storytelling stuff. And it turns out that it's, Jemmy Acorn, the crazy guy. And he's singing Wolverine McAllister's theme song, which he sang in earlier issues. Joshua McAllister, Last Gasp McAllister, Ironhead McAllister was his name. And he just keeps singing this ridiculous song. And it actually works. It breaks Wolverine's dark mood, just the inanity of him. And he laughs. And it's a very cleansing, healthy laugh where all the black thoughts that were in his head seem to be dispelled. Now we see Calico Jack has gone off with BK. And they're going to head off to find Tecumseh and join the cause. And then Seamus O'Connor, who's a white man, he joins up with them. He feels so guilty about shooting that Indian girl that he's like, yeah, I'll join up with you guys. He's going to need trained soldiers. And he says, I'll be a fine white Indian. Especially because I'm Irish. I guess there's a connection there. I don't know. This is a weird feature that he starts in this issue. He has a calendar out and about in February 1812, but it just has birth dates of anyone who was born in the 18th century or the early 19th century. It has a few events. Like, I could see this could be very useful if they actually gave us world events so we could feel, oh, this is what's going on in the world, at least in America, to give us context. But it's just a bunch of random birthdays. I assume these people are all historical figures, but kind of weird. I don't like it. It's a waste of 2 pages. They say, here's some events, which is interesting. But most of it's just these random birthdays. Here we have the letter page. And cartoonist Rick Taylor wrote in and drew this nice drawing of Wolverine. Pretty nice. Someone sent him an old almanac from 1812. Here's a reproduction of it. And that's it for this issue. Next we have Journey number 18. Another nice cover. Recap. And now we see Wolverine's hanging out with Jemmy. And if you guys remember, Jemmy's batshit crazy. He's a kind of a spiritualist. He's kind of a Christian in a weird way, but a very weird way. Like, it's his own brand of Christianity. He's a nut. He's completely insane. So it's weird. He sings all these songs and they're anachronistic. He'll like sing the theme song from Texaco commercials from the 50s, which I guess, like a million monkeys in front of a million typewriters might write Shakespeare. I guess some crazy guy spouting random words in 1812, he might come close to a song that was written in 100 years from now. I don't know. It's just silly, but it's kind of funny, actually. It's kind of fun. They see this moose who looks like he's stuck in the snow, but he frees himself and chases after these two guys. Luckily, Wolverine's there and knows what to do. Now we see the writer. What's his name? Kraft. And Kraft has been caught by these guys who want to play William Tell with him. They've got a pine cone on his head. and he's begging for mercy. And it turns out it's those 3 Hessian brothers that we saw about 6 issues ago. These were Hessian soldiers who, after the Revolutionary War, just became, went into the forest because they weren't wanted anymore. And right when they're about to shoot the acorn off his head, we hear blam. And the brother who was shooting says, wait, I didn't even fire. Where'd that come from? And of course it's Wolverine. All the way from the woods, made the shot. And Jemmy behind him singing his theme song. So he has a reunion with these 3 Hessians. And if you remember last time, him and his buddy Crawfish, they kind of bamboozled these guys out of a canoe. So they're kind of pissed off, but they also know that Wolverine can beat the shit out of him. So they're just like, they're sucking it up. God, I love the way some of these drawings of Wolverine, just so weird. It doesn't even look human, but it works. I never, for a second, when I'm reading these, I'm just like, yeah, that's Wolverine. But when you actually look at the anatomy of his face, he's a bizarro character. So then everyone pretty much just becomes friends. And, but Wolverine, he knows his wood lore. He says, guys, a really bad storm's coming this way. We got to build a lodge or we're going to be dead. So they all listen to Wolverine and they gather trees. They chop down some trees and they build. And once again, William Messner Loebs shows us that he's done his research. And he actually shows us how these lodges were built on the fly. And so the storm comes, and they're all inside. Jimmy's driving them all crazy by singing stupid songs. And they basically have some firewood in there, and a little food, mostly acorns. And they're just waiting to see if their firewood will last longer than the storm. Because if it doesn't, they're dead. So they all start asking each other, hey, how'd you come to the wilderness? So we find all these great little backstories of all these characters. So Kraft goes first. He was in Boston. He kind of fell in love with this widow named Eleanor. And, he wasn't doing too well with his writing and barely making ends meet. And one day he came home to the boarding house that Eleanor owned. That's how he met her. And she was waiting in his bed. And it sounds like they made love. And then he says, of course, I left the next morning. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? What do you mean, of course you left? You said she was young, beautiful, and wealthy. And intelligent? What, did I miss something here? And then Kraft, is a pretentious fop. He's like, a true artist must have love as an ideal, not as a depraved reality. Romance must be untouched by sweat or lubriciousness or mucus. Romance must be pure. So that's what an idiot this guy is. He left because he didn't want this ideal love to be tarnished by reality. So now Kraft asks the Hessian brothers, and they elaborate a little bit more on the story. They were just farmers who needed money, so they joined the cavalry back in Germany. Their noblemen, or whatever you call it, basically loaned them out, hired them out to the English king for the Revolutionary War. He said that, during the war and when the war was over, everyone was like spitting in their faces. Little kids were throwing rocks at them. I forgot to mention, I kind of like this wispy style he does for the flashbacks. If you notice, it's much less inked and very, very fast and dashed off. But it kind of works. It's a pretty interesting style. So, like I said, the Hessians were just sick of this shit, and they said, let's just go off in the woods and find our own place. And Wolverine tells his story. Doesn't really tell much of his story, though. He basically just tells his story from like a year ago. He's like, yeah, I got this package. I'm supposed to deliver it to this town. If you remember, that was like 15 issues ago. That guy, Three Finger Pierre, asked him to deliver the package. He still hasn't opened it. And so now Jemmy Acorn tells his story. And he was a soldier in the American Army. And basically he was, killing rioters. After the Revolution, there was a lot of discontent. The soldiers who came home from war weren't being paid. So then I guess America hasn't really changed much. The government just sent out soldiers to shoot them instead of giving them the money they owed them. This is why I really like this wispy style. Look at these great caricatured faces. This is a really nice drawing here. So he's mustered out because of some injury. A cannon explodes. And one day he sees this guy, Emanuel Swedenborg, preaching in the streets. Most people would be like, this guy's a madman, but this changed Jemmy Acorn's life and he saw the light. So he basically follows the word of this prophet, Swedenborg. And he just becomes a true, almost like a monk. He just goes around begging. He makes it sound like Swedenborg was just a shit who treated him like shit. But in Jemmy's mind, he was like, oh, he was, testing my mettle and teaching me lessons. That hat he wears is his begging bowl. The only thing that Emanuel Swedenborg gave him, this little pot where he could beg. And then one night, it was raining. He was out in the middle of nowhere, climbed a hill. And he said, God, give me a sign. And a lightning bolt hit him, probably attracted to the metal pot in his head. And that's probably why Jemmy's so fucking nuts. Because it did something to his head. And he said, the angels were speaking to me. So after that, he started hearing voices and started making up these crazy songs. So maybe there's some kind of magic where he's getting transmissions from the future. Here's where he sings the Texaco song. We are the men from Texaco. We work from Maine to Mexico. We get that calendar again. And the letter page. I'll try to see if there's anything interesting here. No, I don't think so. And now we have number 19. Another fun cover. So we continue. Our friends here, our protagonists, is still in this lodge. The firewood's running out. This is called Chapter 19, Past Lives, by the way, continued. They're entertaining themselves by making shadow puppets. And I forgot to mention that these are all narrated by Kraft. That's why it's, this handwritten style, the script. He's writing a journal. And he is just such a, just a jerk. He looks down on all these guys and he's making fun of them. They're all eating every kind of acorn food you could eat. Toasted acorn, comez-vous, acorn casserole, stewed acorns, acorns on a stick. But nonetheless, even though the acorns are keeping them alive, they're sick of Jemmy talking about acorns. They kind of have this theological debate. So then finally, it looks like it stopped snowing. So they're not going to die after all. They leave the lodge. And they started getting ready to hunt some food. So they come upon this dead body. Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I missed something. One of the Hessian brothers is feeling a little poorly, and he has apoplexy, and he dies. This is a really sad scene because the Hessian brothers are like, oh, yeah, he's looking a little better today. And Wolverine's, he knows. He's just like, nah, he hasn't been blinking. He's not long for this world. So they make a funeral pyre for him because, you can't bury him. The wolves will get to him. And Wolverine says a few words over the body. This is some really sharp art here. I like when William Messerlopes tightens up the art. You can really see the Will Eisner. And so then they split up. The two surviving Hessian brothers walk off, and now it's Wolverine and Kraft again. Chapter 20, The Solitary. And the whole time, Kraft is always kind of belittling Wolverine, even though he knows that he couldn't survive without him. And he is definitely respects his knowledge of wood lore. But he's also, in his journals, is constantly, chopping on him and just saying, basically treating him like he's half an animal or something. So then we meet this new guy here. And he's looks like he's carrying some water buckets. And he sees Wolverine. He sounds pretty crazy. Because in his thoughts, he's saying, oh, sometimes I can hear them under the snow, moving about, struggling to climb out. And then they see Wolverine. He sees Wolverine pulling Kraft out of the snow because he fell into a sinkhole. So he thinks, oh my God, it's them. They're coming out from under the snow. And he leaps at Wolverine. And he's not much of a fighter. So he just leaps on Wolverine's head and is grabbing his ponytails and not doing much else. So Kraft picks up the rifle and starts trying to hit the guy in the head. And he's like, got him. But he keeps hitting Wolverine in the face. Got him again. And Wolverine just stops him and says, that'll do. Reckon he suffered enough. Man, I love William Messerlopes' quiet sense of humor. It's very dry. So it turns out this guy has got this. He's been living, or not living, but studying these barrows. They're basically ancient mounds. And I don't know about these ancient mounds. I don't remember reading this in history. But apparently there were these mounds. They were probably made by the Native Americans. But there was something about them that people were like, oh, who made these? It obviously isn't the Native Americans. Oh, I think it was racism. I guess they were engineered at a certain level that they thought, oh, no Native American could ever make these kind of mounds. And they were full of bones and skulls. So for, I guess, a while, these were very mysterious, kind of like in search of type stuff, Like who made the burial mounds? Of course, there's the Native Americans who lived there. So I guess he's a very learned guy, this guy. His name's Templar Collins. And he says, you can stay with me. I've been camping out in this mound. It's warm at least, So he's actually, sends his papers back to the American Antiquarian Society. He's a real scholar and scientist. But even though he's a little crazy. He kind of tells them about the ghosts of the mound builders. That's who he thinks was under the snow. So they all go to bed, but we see Kraft here. He can't sleep. So he's writing in his journal. And but he can't see because Wolverine's having his nightmares again. Help, help, the Dark Man's coming. Which we still haven't gotten to the bottom of that. And the other Templar is talking in his sleep. Thank you, gentlemen of the Academy. I accept this award. So he's just like, oh, fuck. Now we go back to Calico Jack and Seamus O'Connor, and BK. And they finally find some Native Americans. And they were from Tecumseh's camp. And they tell our three guys here, they say, the soldiers came. They destroyed the whole village. They killed everyone they found. All the warriors were out. And apparently the Tippecanoe River is red with blood. So I guess the name of this camp was Prophetstown. That was Tecumseh's stronghold. And they tell him that there's no more Prophetstown. And by the way, those magic shirts didn't stop rifle balls at all. Yeah, apparently it was just a horrible massacre. They were bayoneting old men and women and children. And I love this little line here where this Native American says, I'm sorry, guys, I forgot to mention. It was William Henry Harrison. He was the general who did this horrible massacre. And this Native American says, oh, this time Harrison has gone too far. And BK says, that's right, he'll be in plenty trouble, you bet. And Seamus says, killing women and babes, people'll be after him for certain. And Calico Jack, he knows the score. He says, yeah, they'll probably elect him president, which is exactly what happened. Man, I love his writing so much. Another calendar and another letter page. Nice little drawing from William Ezra Lobes he drew for one of the fans. And we get another little Larry Martyr Bean World drawing. Little fan letter with a little sketch. And that's it, guys, for Journey number 17 through 19. I was going to do more issues. I wanted to. But next issue begins a really long story arc. I think it's like, I don't know, 8 issues maybe? Or 7 issues? So I'm going to split that up into 2. I figured I'd end here. But we'll get to that next time. Hope you guys enjoyed looking at these. I'm still loving these. I think I'm loving them even more now. The art's getting better even. And I love his writing so much. And the storytelling is still great. So I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I am. So thanks for watching. And I hope to see you here next time at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.